Hi, hello everyone. Nice to meet you. My name is Fadli. I'm from Jakarta Capital City Government as the young expert planner for urban parks, forest, and environment. So, in this session, we will discuss about the topic that I brought during my internship at the DUTEP program together with one of my mentor. He will be join us later, Johan Verlinde. The topic of the sessions will be the blue-green development concept, lesson learned from Rotterdam to Jakarta. So I will also be the moderator of the sessions. After each of our presentations, there will be Q&A sessions, and we will answering some questions from the audience. Who can you can write the comments or questions in the comment sections. So let's start. Okay. First of all, I wanna present my presentation titled "The Blue Green Development Concept as a public space for Jakarta Urban Renewal Project." I choose the case study from Blok M Senayan Corridor. Okay, so here's a glimpse of Indonesia, a tropical an archipelago country with the 38 provinces, with numerous of urban population projections that will be projected around 319 millions in 2045. And one of the main metropolitan area is the Jabodetabek, according to Jakarta, Bogor, Depok, Tangerang, and Bekasi. There will be around 35 million people live in the metropolitan area. And Jakarta itself, uh, it, it has around 10.67 million population during the night and around 14 million people during the day. It's around two times wide from Jakarta's area, from Rotterdam area. So, based on several studies from NASA and BRIN, and also studies from INDEF, it says that Jakarta has some serious issues of groundwater, and as much as 40% of the city now sits below sea level. And uh, the the flood of this area will be approximately around 160.4 square kilometers, or around 24% of its total of Jakarta area, and it needs the comprehensive mitigation and adaptation efforts. So based on in-depth reports, around 10 trillion of rupiahs and affected around more than 30,000 people that spread into 164 spots that will be have an impact of this flooding area in Jakarta. Jakarta itself also consists of will Jakarta itself was uh, will, will be Jakarta itself has deplayed by the 13 main rivers from southern area, from the Bogor and Puncak area. So Jakarta has some very flood strategic issues. First is the waterfront city. Uh, it used to be planned. It was to be designed with a canal system, and with this physical characteristic, Jakarta is home for water and floodplain. The second one on the strategic issues of Jakarta is water scarcity, like around 80 until 8 from 80 until 85% groundwater is below the health standard of the nation in Indonesia. So you can see in the map that more than the red areas is having damage around more than 80% lowering of the groundwater level. And the raw water sources is mainly come from the Jatiluhur Reservoir, and from the Jakarta River itself only 3%. And the third strategic issues of flooding in Jakarta is about the land deficiency. Based on the modeling test for Jakarta in the year 2100, projected that the factor of land subsidence has the most influence on the magnitude of the impact of flooding on the north coast. And it estimated the inundation area around 149 until 151 uh, kilometer square, with loss equivalent around more than 33.8 trillion rupiahs. And the type of soil in Jakarta is clay. So there's a planning paradigm uh, based on the simulations doing by the researchers. There's a note that the green open space does not have a significant impact on reducing runoff discharge, so integration is needed through the blue-green open space development. Okay, maybe one of you may have already known about the plan of the relocations of the capital of Indonesia by the president on since 2019. So it needs to the national government plan to relocate the capital of Indonesia, and Jakarta will become the global city afterwards. So based on the initial identification of asset uh, or asset locations from the national government, there will be approximately this phase of several ministerial or building owned by the central government will be relocated in several stages. And the first stage of the scenario will be effect in this uh, four, four buildings that include in my case study area, which is the Blok M until Senayan Corridor. So this is my case study area. As you can see, there's this delineation as approximately the Blok M until Senayan, and I choose the corridor because I think it's the more connected in the backbone of the area, and it lays more than mainly the activities of this area is rely on this backbone. So I choose the corridor that will that the corridor itself is consists also with the public transportations. So the case study area around 190 hectares. So this is my research framework from the first introduction, and then some methodologies I choose in the research using placemaking, observation, and interview. And also I did some literature review, and I observed 9 locations in Rotterdam during my internship there. And I suggest some development consists of physical element, social cultural element, project development, community engagement, and I recommend some action plans in short term, long term, and some toolkits. So my basic question research will be how to plan a blue-green development concept as a public space in Blok M Senayan Corridor. And the purpose is to plan a development concept of this kind of blue-green infrastructure as part of Jakarta Urban Renewal Project. So there are some problems I identified in these studies. Uh, some of them that there are 3 sub-districts in the case study area that's still inundated during heavy rainfall in 2020 until 2021. And there are limited assets owned by the Jakarta Capital City Government. So the stakeholders within the case study areas are also identified varies regarding the public, private, and individuals. And there are also some few social cultural activities within the area, mostly are office buildings. But also there are some opportunities inside this case study area that some part of case study will include in the CBD or that can be highly potential to become economic engine for Jakarta toward global city. And they also laid the ASEAN Secretariat it's planning to develop into a larger scale. Currently, there are several strong activities in the case study area. For example, the Gelora Bung Karno City Forest, the M Block space, and the Martha Christina Tiahahu Literacy Park. And there are also some local regulation of incentive approach that can be drafted. And it also important to promote the seamless mobility. It can be integrated with the transit-oriented development or public transportation stations. So this is some theories that I researched regarding the physical element of the blue-green infrastructure. For example, rainwater harvesting, constructed wetlands, rain garden, and sediment pond. And there are some example of porous asphalt or concrete and porous paving that can be used in the pedestrians in the inundated area. And these are some theory I choose about the placemaking regarding the social cultural element, which are public space with placemaking as a third space development. Why I said the third space. The first this first place will be our home or our living, and the second place will be our workplace or school, and the third place is between our home and our workplace or school. So there will be many activities between them, including some leisures, recreations, and entertainment. So this public infrastructure and amenities hold the key factor in creation of the third space. So we dig into some locations that I observed during my interns in Rotterdam. Identified some physical and socio-cultural elements, as you can see in the presentations. There's a locations for example, in Duck Park, you can identify some green wall and rooftop garden, for example, and there's an example of using sport activities and amphitheater in the Betham Plain Water Square is actually excellent uh, an excellent example introduced by the city of Rotterdam to uh, integrate the urban water management and flood mitigations with the urban space and public space development. So there's also some example in Thunders Plain and Bellamy Plain regarding the water storage, and in Sparta Stadium regarding the urban water buffer, which are using the rainwater harvesting in the uh, the football field, and then they are circulated the water and becoming fresh water that can be used in recreational and other issues and other use. And there are also some example in maintenance work, and this is actually a quick example of implementation of Wadi or bioswale. Wadi is a small area that can be absorb water during the heavy rainfall, but if there's no rain at the time, they will become an excellent example of urban park. And there are also some examples I identified in Duck Park, the Lushvarkhobogen also. And as you can see, Duck Park is quite excellent also in the implementation of the rooftop in the rooftop above the buildings. So there, the city of Rotterdam built some excellent example of these urban parks using maybe a building that uh, previously previously used for storage, and they're using this EPS or styrofoam to keep maintain the soil in the above of the building, so it will getting not it will not flip during the development and during the heavy rainfall. Regarding the lesson learned, the next lesson learned from Rotterdam about the project development, I identified some ideas project that currently conducted by the city of Rotterdam. It's about one of them is the Rijnhaven master plan. It has a different financial scheme between the land exploitation and park development. So the municipality carry out project development and land exploitation to developers for the constructions, and they aim to build to realize the park immediately and to secure some funding by the municipality and to propose to the council as to secure some financial. Regarding the community engagements about on this project, the participation process had been undertaken since 2018 with more than 1,200 responses coming from the residents, users, entrepreneurs. So it's basically very well participations examples doing by the city of Rotterdam for this large-scale city project. And this is also a good coordination to upgrading the metro stations that have been cooperated the RET as the operator of the public transport in Rotterdam. So we're back to our case study area, which is the Blok M Senayan Corridor, is located in Jakarta. So I divided the case study area into two clusters. The first cluster will be planned into the MICE and office CBD around 100 hectares. And the second cluster will be developed into civic center and cultural hub around 90 hectares. For the next slide, this is my development concept. I divided it into spatial aspect and non-spatial aspect. Spatial aspects regarding to adding some physical and socio-cultural element within the area, especially in the flood locations. As you can see, there are three sub-districts in the case study area that still having flood during the heavy rainfall, which are the Gunung Agung, Senayan, and Karet Semanggi sub-district. And the second point in spatial aspect is to encourage developers, landowners, and building owners to adopt rooftop garden and green walls. And the last point of the spatial aspect is to design the TOD area with blue-green infrastructure to achieve seamless mobility. And for the non-spatial aspect, I'm suggesting the draft or revised regulation to giving some incentive for landowners within the area if they applying this blue-green infrastructure scheme. And they also need us to some assessment of the central government building that will vacant, that need to be assessed to be cooperative with developers, maybe to become some residentials, civic and cultural centers, or other activities. So we're getting to the first cluster in the spatial aspects. I identified several examples in the existing conditions. So I suggesting some recommendation in several spots regarding the adding physical and social cultural elements, some to encourage developers and to design TOD area and the several spots of the central government building that will be vacant. And this is the some pictures of these areas in the cluster one. This is Mangi Park, Sudirman Street, and some aerial view of the Sudirman Street. And I suggested to adding some physical and social cultural element in Mangi Park with the with the water fountain, benches, more trees, and water element, and to adding some green walls and green belt in Sudirman Streets. As you can see, also need to apply some green rooftop garden above the building in the Sudirman Street area. And this is another examples in cluster one regarding the Ministry of Pan RB or bureaucrat ministerial. It can be maybe redeveloped or revitalized, becoming a new building using the compact city, approach. It maybe can be built into new landmark. For example, this is the building of depot in Rotterdam. And in the parking lots, it can introduce water storage or water crate to storage the water during the heavy rainfall, because this area is close to the inundation area of the Gunung sub-district that I mentioned before. And there are also suggesting some illustrations in the Sudirman Street for adding some uh, green belt and trees and bushes, and also for the vacant land that currently still vacant, which are owned by the private sectors. It can be cooperate to also introduce some water elements in their area. So in the cluster two, which will be planned into the civic center and cultural hub, I also identified some area here. There are two MRT stations in this area, the ASEAN and Blok M MRT stations. First, for example, in this several locations of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs owned by the central government, and also there are some high school, SMA and 82 owned by the Jakarta provincial government that can introduce the same concept as the Bethlehem Plain Water Square in Rotterdam, or to introduce some rooftop garden. And since it located in the inundation area, so it can be suggest to adapt the concept of the urban water storage. And also, these are some examples I illustrate for the redevelopment of ministerial building. For example, in this Ministry of ATR or Spatial plan ministry, and also some adding some social-cultural elements in the Blok M area and some pedestrian way in the block in the entrance of the Blok M terminal. And regarding the project development and community engagement of this case study, I suggested a specific project development is needed, and the municipality need to propose the council to allocate budget for the master plan. The aim is to realizing the several public space in the area immediately. And regarding the 4 potential central government buildings need to be assessed as residential, civic, or cultural center also need to be assessed with the central government. And they also need to drafting the incentives regulation within the area and its surrounding. The next part of the community engagement. So after the master plans drafted, it's important to conduct workshops and open public participations in all media, especially the specific target, for example, the inhabitants and all other stakeholders from children, women, youth, minorities within and surrounding the area, and also some detailed design for public space within which using the blue-green development concept should be open to public contests. And there are also some potential participation by landowners who can supporting the seamless mobility to TOD area and to new public space development. And it also needs to be cooperated with the public transportation operators, for example, the PT MRT Jakarta and PT Trans Jakarta. So this is my suggestion of the action plans of the project from the short term, the first 2 years, and for the long term, the third year until maybe 10 years ahead. So the first one, as you can see, we need to, I suggest to form a specific project development, to allocate budget to drafting master plan, etc. And the year 2, it's important to conduct a public consultation workshops. The campaign in all media should be started. And regarding the 4 central government buildings, already decided what is the best utilization of it, and the incentive regulations already set. And in the long term, it's important to also revise the master plans due to the needs of the people and the area itself, and to encourage temporary events within the site that attract public awareness, and to integrate the stations within the area to develop it with the TOD or transit-oriented development concept. And it also need to maintain it in the longer term after this. And these are some initiative toolkits that can be adopted by the landowners and individuals in the area. Like example, introducing the white roofs, water garden, water playground, water elements for evaporations, vegetation fence, and water permeable pavements. Thank you very much. That's all my presentations. I give the floor to Johan. Hi, Johan.
Hi, Haley, and good day to everyone. And thank you very much for inviting me. It's good to be here, and would love to share some insights from Rotterdam on climate adaptation. All right, so my name is Johan Verlinde. I'm the program director for the climate adaptation program for Rotterdam. And I also do a lot in international cooperation on this topic because we as a city like to learn from other cities around the world. And also we like to share what we are doing with other cities and really work together and share knowledge, because that's really important. We all face the negative effects of climate change, the one more than the other, but we really need to learn from each other. So today I'm going to tell you a little bit more about our adaptation strategy, our international cooperation, and then I hope we have a discussion afterwards. So Rotterdam WeatherWise is our latest adaptation strategy, and it's really about adapting the public space, the private space, but also behavior, because we all need to work together in a city to make our city climate proof. A little bit more about the background of our city. So like Jakarta, Rotterdam is a delta city, which is really nice because you live next to the water, you work next to the water, you can have a port, but it also brings a lot of challenges. And Rotterdam has water in the DNA from the early start, because even the name Rotterdam comes from a civil structure. I'm a civil engineer, so I quite like that. But in the picture on the left, you see a dam. It was a dam that was built in the river Rotte, so hence the name Rotterdam. And the dam was built there to already control the water. And around that dam, that city gradually grew. And on the picture on the right, you see already the port city Rotterdam, but you can also see a canal structure in there. And the canal structure was there not only for navigation, but also as a basic sewage. So before we had the canal structure, there were problems with health, a cholera epidemic, and then they started to build all these canals to keep the city safe. So water is always in the DNA of the city. And Rotterdam always was a water city. We had a lot of canals in our city. But in the beginning of the 20th century, a decision was made to transform Rotterdam from a water city into a car city, because the car came to Rotterdam. And then the city council said, okay, let's fill up all our canals and transform it into roads. So the picture you see now is called the Golden Canal. And this is the Golden Canal nowadays. Well, now, I challenge you to find any water in here. It's not. And it's still called the Golden Canal, the Goudse Singel. And a lot of streets in Rotterdam end with the word Singel, which is the Dutch word for canal. But there are now all roads. So that's quite problematic. So we don't have almost any surface water within the city, which means that rainfall is a huge problem, but also heat is becoming more and more a problem, because all those pavement, all the concrete heats up during the day, radiates the heat at night. Buildings cannot cool down. And in the Netherlands, we are mostly focused on cold, so we have central heating, but no air conditioning. So heat is also becoming more and more a problem in our city. And especially when you look at this picture, also like Jakarta, which is already for parts below sea level, well, Rotterdam is for 85% below sea level. And all the blue areas are below sea level, and it's up to -7 meters below sea level. And we are very well protected from the river and the sea by all those levees, dikes, storm surge barriers. But rainfall also falls on the other side of the dike, of course. And well, the city being totally paved, it means it can only go to our sewer system. So we have quite a good drainage system. So 2,400 kilometers of sewage, mostly combined sewage system, and 1,100 pumping stations to pump the water to higher grounds and eventually to the wastewater treatment plant before it's discharged into the river. But with climate change, we see higher rainfall intensities, more heat, longer heat waves, and it really has a strong effect on the livability in our city. So we really need to work on the adaptive city. And we are doing that already for years. The current adaptation strategy is called Rotterdam WeatherWise, but it's the fourth iteration of our adaptation strategy. So we are working on this for years and years. And I think the strong element on climate adaptation is multifunctionality. So it's not heat, it's not hot the whole year. It's not raining 100% of the year. So making sure that it acts as a reduction on the negative effects of climate change for one part, but also is an addition to the public space or an addition to the buildings in the city. And our current adaptation strategy is called WeatherWise. This QR code brings you to our latest strategy, translated into English, because we are happy to share what we are doing. And this was approved by City Council in June. So this is fresh. You can read the document. It's 270 pages, so it's quite a lot. But this figure actually shows it all, what we are doing in this. So step one is mapping and modeling of our adaptation challenges. And I will give you some examples of that later on. But we look at flooding, rainfall, heat, groundwater, land subsidence, and drought. And on a very detailed level, we did all the modeling. So we know on a building level what kind of problems will occur. So will flooding be a problem here, or rainfall and drought, or maybe only land subsidence and heat? So for every location in Rotterdam, we know what's going on. And then we look at implementation opportunities, because as a program, we don't do projects by ourselves, but we link in with everything what's going on in the city. And we do that on 5 themes. So the first one is new developments. Like every big city in the world, Rotterdam is growing, so we need to build, we need to develop, which means if you don't do it in a good way, more concrete, hence more challenges on rainfall and heat. So we put climate adaptation in the building code. So now every new building in Rotterdam needs to store a certain amount of water on the new development. But we also mapped where all those developments are going on. Then the public space. That's the easiest one because that's what we do as a city. Maintenance to the roads. For us, sewage renewal is very important because Rotterdam is below sea level, but also sinking. And also our sewage pipes are sinking, but not at the same velocity. So every 60 years, we have to renew the sewage pipes, which means we have to open up the roads, which means an opportunity to do something to the public space. Then existing built environments. How can we transform the buildings that are already there? The citizens. How do we engage citizens in climate adaptation? And the last one is the other transitions that are going on in the city, because climate adaptation is not the only transition. A lot is going on: energy transition, mobility transition, biodiversity transition. And we also mapped all those opportunities also on the map. And if you map opportunity over your challenges, you know where those two link and where there's an opportunity to do something. And the dot on the horizon is 2030. So by 2030, our program is done, which doesn't mean that climate adaptation is done, but then climate adaptation should be a standard for everyone that does something with an impact on the city. So the city government, the citizen, the real estate developer, they all know what they have to do. So, and this is one of the maps. So we have maps on a city level that shows you where there are problematic neighborhoods. So this one is on rainfall. So where do we have a problem with water storage? Where is the water storage deficit? So which means in case of heavy rainfall, there's no way we can store the water. And the more blue, the bigger the problem is. So this gives you some overview of problematic areas in Rotterdam. And then we also have neighborhood maps. This is one of the neighborhoods in Rotterdam. On blue, you see the result of a flood model. So those are the water depths of a heavy rain event. Then you see the reddish and orange dots. Those are properties that have a risk of flooding in case of heavy rainfall. And you also see the energy, electricity boxes, hospitals. They're all mapped on these vulnerability maps. And we have 15 of these for every neighborhood on different teams, which gives you a really detailed overview of what's going on in this neighborhood. And this is an example of a map that shows you where we are going to develop in the next few years. So all those buildings are a threat to the city if you don't do it in a good way, but also opportunity to make those buildings climate proof from the beginning. Well, let me give you some examples. And Haley already showed some of them in his presentation, which he adapted to his local case in Blok M. And the first one is the water square. And we started with this 12 years ago. We have now a lot of these all around the city. And it's about storing water, but also making the public space more attractive. And this is one of the squares in Rotterdam. It used to be totally paved with all those concrete stones. So a really dull and boring square in the city. But it was also a problematic area where we have a lot of problems during heavy rainfall. And then we invited all the potential users of this square. So there's a school, there's a church, there are people working there are people living there. And we invited them all. And we said, okay, we want to make the square more attractive and we want to store water. So, and we ask you, what kind of functions do you want on this square? Well, and that's combined. So there are 3 reservoirs. The middle one obviously is used for sports. Then there's a small one on the top on the right. And there's a stage because there's a theater school and they wanted a stage. And the reservoir on the left can be used for skating and BMXing. And even the church, they have services on Sunday in the biggest reservoir. But when it starts to rain, we can store 1.7 million liters of rainwater in here, which reduces the stress on our sewer system. It also, after the rain event, it doesn't flow to the sewer system. It's infiltrated into the groundwater, but it's only used 5% of the time. And the other 95% of the time, it can be used for all those different functions. So when it's raining, it looks like this. So you really see the water flowing. And it can stay in the reservoir for 24 hours, also because of health issues. And after 24 hours, gates are opened and water can infiltrate into the groundwater. And when the weather is good, it looks like this. So kids from the school have their lunch, it's used for sporting. And we have 10 of these around the city, and they all look completely different because every citizen or neighborhood has its own needs. So they're always tailor-made to the local conditions. One of the bigger ones, and also new for us, because I mentioned that water is always in the DNA of Rotterdam, but we always also saw water kind of as a threat to the livelihood in the city. So what we did is retain the water and get rid of the water as soon as possible, making sure the city wouldn't flood. But now, with climate change, we are experiencing more and more periods of drought and longer periods of drought, which also will have a big impact on our fresh water supply. So we should also think about circularity and reusing the rainwater that falls on our city. But the problem is, it rains in one month and you need the water in another month. So can we somehow connect those two dots? And that's what we did with the concept of the urban water buffer. And the first one was implemented near a soccer stadium. It's a soccer stadium in a neighborhood which has a huge problem during heavy rainfall. And the soccer field needs a lot of water and irrigation. So can you more or less use the rainwater to water the soccer pitch? And that's what we do over there. So we harvest the rainwater during heavy rainfall. We temporarily store it underneath the soccer field for kids outside of the stadium. So underneath the soccer field, there are those plastic boxes that can store water, so a hollow space underneath the surface. Then we treat the rainwater with halophytes, so with plants, and then we pump it into the first aquifer, so into the sand layer, which in Rotterdam is around 15 to 30 meters deep. And you only need a pipe and a pump, so no construction below the surface. So you can fill up the aquifer with the cleaned rainwater, and once we need the water, we pump it up. And it has an efficiency of 65%. So you cannot pump everything up that you pumped into the aquifer. But it's really beneficial because now we don't need to use the precious water from the tap, but we can use rainwater to irrigate our soccer field. And we now have several of these around the city. This one is for a soccer field, but we also do a lot of greening projects in the city where we add a lot of green to the city. But that green also needs to stay green. So we also use the harvested rainwater to water the plants. And the last one is also, we have a big conference center now, and they also added an urban water buffer. So now all the toilets are flushed with rainwater, but also the whole perimeter is cleaned by rainwater. And I think this is really something we will see a lot in the near future because of drought in the city. Most of these projects are in the public space, but the biggest part of the city is private property. In Rotterdam, it's around 40% public, 60% private. And we cannot fix the problem of climate change only in the public space. We really need everyone to work together with us. So building owners, real estate developers, investors. So that's why we put a lot of effort, and I already mentioned it, in real estate development. So we are putting in our building codes that you need to store water, that you need to add green. This is one of the developments. It's still an artist impression, but it's being constructed at the moment. And we say you need to store an amount of water, but we don't say how an architect or developer needs to do that. So they are free, but it also, if you do it in a creative way, it is really also very attractive to the building, because the green you see here is not on the surface, it's elevated, so it's on top of the roof. So you create an extra public space on top of the roof of these buildings, which is really nice because the people can walk there, relax there, but it also stores water. The green evaporates, so it also cools down the buildings and the area. So by doing this, every building in Rotterdam from now on will be built in a climate adaptive way. And so we do big projects on a neighborhood level, also on the city level, but with big water storages. But we really shouldn't forget the citizens. So we put a lot of effort into engaging our citizens. So we start dialogues with every neighborhood in our city, because every neighborhood is different. People living there are different. And we tell them the challenges we face as Rotterdam, because I am now telling you that we live below sea level and everything is going on, but a lot of people living in Rotterdam don't even know that. So they all should be aware of the responsibilities they have by living in Rotterdam, but also that they can do a lot together with their neighbors, greening the streets. And in Rotterdam, you're allowed to take in front of your house some of the tiles out of the sidewalk and transform it into a pocket garden, a facade garden. And we thought, how can we attract more people into greening their streets? And in 2020, we started a national championship tile removal. And it was back then, a fun way to start a competition between Amsterdam and Rotterdam. And usually there's a huge rivalry between those cities. And we said, okay, those two cities are competing. Which of the cities and citizens will transform the biggest part of the city from stones into green? Well, it started with 2 cities. The next year, 70 cities competed. The year afterwards, 110 cities competed. And this year, 170 cities in the Netherlands are competing in the national championship tile removing. So a lot of people in the Netherlands are working on to greening the city. And it starts as a fun way by doing this together with your neighbors. It's for a lot of people also a starting point to do something to their roofs, to their gardens. So by also sometimes making a tough subject like climate change and climate adaptation fun and small, you can attract a lot of people working together with you. And it almost concludes my presentation. Something about international cooperation. Here you see some pictures about our cooperation with Jakarta, which already dates back from 1985, I've heard, but I'm involved in this since 10 years, also within the Dutch Training and Exposure Program. But Rotterdam and Jakarta share a lot of similarities, also a lot of differences, but also similarities. We are coastal cities, we are delta cities, we suffer from land subsidence. So the impact of climate change is really big on both our cities. So it's really important to work together. And we are very happy to invite 10 young professionals from Jakarta every year to Rotterdam to work in our organization. Also at Van Noord, the dredging company, the Water Authority Delftland, the Port of Rotterdam, and really experience how we work with water, but also have a discussion. So also my colleagues that are involved in this program discuss their program with the colleagues from Jakarta, and we benefit both from this. So it's really important to do this. And already 70 professionals came to Rotterdam, and we hope more and more are coming in the next years. And also besides Jakarta, we work together with Singapore, and the things we learned, we wrote a book about this. So living with water, lessons from Singapore and Rotterdam. What are our differences? What are our similarities? What can we learn from each other? So I think it's really important to learn and share our knowledge and not keep it to ourselves, because climate change is such an important topic. We should share what we are doing with everyone and work together on tackling these problems. So that's it. That was my presentation, and hopefully there are some questions we can discuss.
Okay, thank you, Johan, for your excellent presentation. Maybe we can read some questions from the audience in the comment sections. Maybe I will read the questions from the Arman Yusuf. Maybe we can, either you and me can respond to the questions. So the spatial approach by encourage private builders to create green walls, rooftop garden, and such are interesting. It may cool down the inside chamber, thus lowering electric costs, etc. However, maintain such also required great effort and cost too. So how government can stipulate such great endeavor to make it reality? That's the first questions from uh, Arman Yusuf.
Yeah.
And oh, actually, there's another questions just come in from Martin Bell. There's a question for you, Johan. How did you connect with the locals in the city with the NK Tegelwitten?
Hmm.
Was it a social media campaign or what strategy was implemented for increasing this engagement?
Okay. Shall I start with the
Okay,
answer to the question?
maybe I will start first to answer the first
Perfect.
question, and you
Yeah.
can continue answers the next one. So, based on the Jakarta experience regarding the how to how government can stipulate such great endeavors, we're trying to regulate these incentive regulations by the governor regulations. There are some participations and from the private sectors, also from the private companies that can introduce uh, to help this to apply this uh, approach. So there will be a both win-win solution for us as a government and also to from the building owners to help us preventing and combat to promote the mitigation and adaptation programs regarding the climate change. And yet it's still it will need a lot of effort from all of the stakeholders, especially the inhabitants, the landowners, the build owners, also the government itself to integrate and to harmonize the needs and what are the programs that we already have. Well, currently Jakarta have a regulations, governor regulation number 90 2021 regarding the low carbon development plan. So we are have a target in 2030 reducing 30% of emission from greenhouse gases and becoming net zero emission in 2050. Maybe that's all my perspective of Jakarta. Maybe Johan can add some perspective from Rotterdam and the second questions. Please, Johan.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Haley. Yeah, it's very similar also for us. It takes a lot of effort into making sure that those building owners or real estate developers add green roofs, green facades to their buildings. And I think it's important to look at it in two ways. So, first of all, we encourage them to take action, but it's still their responsibility. So, it's about information. So, first of all, the responsibility of building in a low lying city, Delta city like Rotterdam, you need to take the responsibility into making your building climate proof. But then also making it easy. So, on our website, developers and architects we have 170 building blocks in our toolkit. So you can go to our website, you can see, okay, a green roof or a water storage. What can I do? So that's about the responsibility and encouraging. Then we also have a subsidy program for building owners. So if you want to take action, we partly subsidize those measures. So also to make it more attractive to do so. And the last one is to just putting it in the building code. So more and more measures are being put in the building codes, which also means that the buildings become more expensive, but also as a matter of skill, those measures also become less expensive if a lot of people are implementing it, and then also maintenance will be more attractive. So it goes in steps. So first of all, encouraging them to take action, and then more and more and more and more putting it in the building codes. And then about the national championship, how do we engage the citizens? Yes, it's done by a social media campaign, but that's not enough because you do not reach every citizen in your city by a social media campaign. So, as I already mentioned, we have a neighborhood approach. So we work together with people in the neighborhoods. So we have like intermediary, so someone who is active within a neighborhood. He or she works together with us and knows how to engage the citizens in neighborhoods. Um, we help people into taking action. So sometimes we supply plans, or we give them information, or we start a Saturday where together a street greens the street. So It's about social media. We're really about also about active communication with the citizens.
Okay. Johan, there's another follow-up questions from Martin regarding the tips to increasing these engagements. How maybe the city of Rotterdam try to elevate the engagement of the public of this matter?
So yeah. So it's something that also takes time. So when we start with the neighborhood dialogue, it takes a couple of years in order to engage the whole neighborhood. So mostly there are maybe 20 people active and they do something to the streets, then the other citizens see it and then we help them. So it really the engagement grows and grows over time, which means that you also need to be able to put a lot of effort in this communication and also keep the dialogue alive, so to say.
Okay. So regarding the Jakarta perspective of this engaging of the engagement of the people to promote this mitigation. Also, we try to we conduct some socializations. Uh, One of the agencies, the disaster prevention agencies, conduct socializations in schools and uh, from elementary and middle and senior schools. Uh, they are socializing about the important and how the some programs that can be due to mitigate and adaptate of the potential disaster risk of the climate change. Yeah, it also needs a long term basis, not in the very short one. I think that's also my perspective from Jakarta. So, uh, Johan, I think there are no more questions in the comment sections, but can you maybe also tell us about the next plan of this DUTEP program from between the Jakarta provincial government and the city of Rotterdam? What is the next plan of the DUTEP program?
Yeah, so we are really working on the next phase, and
Mm-hmm.
next year there will be a new batch, and also the year after that. So we are now planning the next two batches of DUTEP.
Oh,
So
okay. So
hopefully,
there will
yeah,
be two batch in 1 year. Two
yeah,
batch in 1 year.
no, two. So one in 2024 and one in 2025. So one batch per
Oh,
year,
okay.
and I guess it will most of the time be 10 participants per batch. Yeah.
Okay, great. I heard also there will be a new host organization, Delta Res, join as the host. So they are confirmed about it. And
Yeah,
can
I'm
you tell
very
me?
happy with the participation of the tires already in the last batch, because they have such strong knowledge on water hydrology modeling, uh, uh, um, coastal protection, and also a lot of experience in Jakarta, right? So they
Yeah,
will join also from for the coming batches, which I'm really happy for.
that's great news. Well, I also experienced a great time during my internship there in the city of Rotterdam, and my fellows in my batch also uh, felt grateful, and we want to say thank you for selected us for this program, and we hope we can continue our collaboration in the future about this urban water management from Jakarta and Rotterdam.
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, and it's always a continuous process. So
Yeah.
it doesn't stop with you leaving Rotterdam. We will stay in touch, and we will have hopefully also some sessions in Jakarta, because it's already been a long time since I've been in Jakarta. I'm really looking forward to coming to Jakarta again.
Yeah, great. Well, we also would like to, if you come to Jakarta, so please tell us so we can have a chit chat and can mingle each other again.
Of course.
Thank you very much, Johan, for your time,
Thank you.
uh, for participate in this session on the winter conference. Thank you very much also for the committee, uh, the NWO Netherlands, and also Nuffic Southeast Asia. Thank you so much for your time. I think I will close the session. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Thank you, Johan.
Bye.
Bye bye.